like if you cry every time. It's said that this phrase is meant for people like me. For those afflicted by a question that tears at your soul and makes you feel just a bit like you're gonna pee your pants. Which is better? Which can I say that I love more, and can I say that I love one less? And which can I say I love in between? I can't. Simply put, it's just too much to bear. I can't do this.
I don't mean to interrupt your clearly unhealthy sob session, but maybe you could have thought of that before turning your camera on and making me sit here?
But some of the gaming community is acting like 2-month-old babies again. We have an obligation to compare these two games.
2-month-old babies can't use the internet.
Okay, then they're acting like 2-month-old babies who have just advanced enough minds to use the internet but still whine about everything.
So, like you were acting a minute ago?
Pretty much.
Okay, so what have you been reading on forums that you took too seriously this time?
Well, even being a Sonic fan, I could deal with people saying that Sonic Adventure 2 may be overrated. But as a die-hard 3D Mario fan, I will not stand for people saying that Mario 64 is even slightly less perfect than we remember.
Yeah, the nerve of some people.
I just don't see why we gotta go and sit down and purposely think about reasons why games we loved aren't as good as we once thought.
'Cause it gets people like you upset enough to draw attention to it.
What do you mean people like me? I fought zombies in Vietnam before you were born so that you could have the ink on your face. Don't act like you know me. Ungrateful cardboard kids these days.
What?
I still have nightmares of those times. There's zombies, and I'm in Vietnam. Oh, survival.
Well, why bring Galaxy into this anyway?
Because this game is life.
Could you just stop doing this?
The game, from the moment I booted it up, became the definition of bliss. And through the whole thing, I never once felt like I wasn't playing a perfect game. Of the hundreds of games I've played through, none have been as perfect an experience as Mario Galaxy, and it's the only game I've ever stuck to saying is perfect in every way. What's that? You say the camera was a little dumb when you walk in a circular planet? Nope. It's just your eyes being dumb.
And the relation is that's how you feel about Super Mario 64 as well?
No, actually, Super Mario 64 was primitive and imperfect in the best way imaginable. This was the first game I ever played, and I love it just as much as Galaxy, but in such a different way. A way that most people remember, as it was more upbeat and fun rather than emotionally nostalgic, since Mario Galaxy has more beauty in graphics, story, and of course the orchestrated music. I love it just as much, but in a totally different fashion. I think that may be the reason that people today say that Mario 64 is overrated, because times have changed, and so has how we loved games. In modern times, games like Mario Galaxy have more cinematic appeal, and because of technical advancements can have more beauty in the scenery and emotion of the game, rather than older games that had electronic music, chunky pixels, and less cinematics, since cutscenes were just beginning to exist when Mario 64 came out.
You know people are literally going to come to your house and sucker punch you if you say 64 is better than Galaxy? Or vice versa, so you're pretty much doomed.
Oh well, I'll be sucker punching myself in the stomach along with them. But this needs to be done. These two games need to be compared for the sake of helping people realize the difference, yet equal value, in Super Mario Galaxy and Mario 64. And I'm really scared right now. Super stinkin' Mario stinkin' Galaxy stinkin'. I don't know. Mario Galaxy. This game, as I'm sure 99.9% of you will relate to, is one of the most treasured memories in gaming history. Heck, not even in gaming history, but in my life. From the moment it came out, people were raving about it. Who would have thought that motion controls in a Mario game would be a natural and fitting element? Who would have thought that the concept of circular gravity could be perfected so well in its debut? And who would have thought that a game with an Italian plumber going into space could have one of the most tear-jerking endings in gaming history? Nobody saw this game coming, and it remains one of Nintendo's greatest achievements. So why is it one of their greatest achievements? Is it because it's such a good game? Yes, that, and also how smartly it did new things. What I mean is, after Super Mario Sunshine underwhelmed most of its audience, nobody was sure just what kind of series Mario was supposed to be. We had his two-dimensional games, then his one 3D jump, Super Mario 64, then we had Super Mario Sunshine, but we never really got a chance to see what Nintendo planned for solid ground for the series, since Mario Sunshine was very different from Mario 64. After the Wii, which introduced motion controls into the gaming community, launched in 2006, there were a lot of questions as to how motion controls could be used in series like Zelda, Metroid, Super Mario, etc. Nintendo quickly proved that they knew what they were doing with Twilight Princess. A game which knew how to use just enough motion controls, but not too much, still sticking to the core Zelda formula that we saw in Ocarina of Time, but also adding the new innovation that we had to offer. Then when Mario Galaxy came along, people were scared that we wouldn't get a game that felt like the legendary Mario 64. How can Nintendo implement the Wii's selling point, the motion controls, and still have it be a platforming game? Would you have to shake the remote to jump or aim to move? Was it going to be completely different from what we hoped for? What we ended up getting was a perfect mixture of what we expected and wanted, an innovation that Nintendo is known for. The first thing they did right was, instead of using motion controls to do what we could do with buttons, such as jump and move, it was more of an addition rather than a change. You could swing the remote to do a spin move that Mario learns in that game, for extra jump time. It felt very natural and allowed the jumping, running, and everything else that we learned in Mario 64 to stay the same. The other innovation that Nintendo added was the circular gravity. This allowed for a huge, yet often overlooked advantage in level design. In the past, worlds were restricted to being laid out in front of you. See how when you enter a level in Mario 64, the whole thing is right there. You can see from one side to the other. This was great fun, of course, but it also was somewhat restricting in a way that we never really realized, as gravity is in real life. The worlds in Mario Galaxy had a massive advantage. The fact that the worlds could be much more than what you could see at once made for more surprise and variety. Now you could add more world within a given area, and traveling to new locations was faster and yet still retain the feeling of traveling. Simply walk a few inches to one side, and you're all of a sudden on a whole different location to explore. Super Mario 64 introduced 3D worlds, but Galaxy introduced us to 3 dimensions of 3D.
What?
Shut up. So in terms of innovation and controls, this game was heavenly, but that's not all it did right. The amount of content was plentiful, the graphics were incredible for not being HD, the music and presentation was possibly the greatest of all time. This game was so immersive and so enthralling that it makes its way into Nintendo's greatest creations of all time. Sadly, this did come with a bit of a price in terms of appeal. Super Mario Galaxy draws you in like very few other games can, and the only way to explain it is it's just pure immersion. Gamers looking for an experience will absolutely fall in love with it. But with so much immersion, the game also demands a lot of attention, and in some ways can be harder to play if you're in a casual mood, or you don't have time to get immersed into such an immersive game. As much as I love this game, and is one of my favorite games of all time, I don't play it very often, just because of how much attention it demands. In many ways, it was like a movie. If you sit down to watch it, you have to watch the whole thing, or you're missing out on the experience. In Galaxy, there are so many fun worlds and memories to revisit, and I find that anytime I do want to play this game, I get a new profile and play through it instead of just choosing levels that I've already unlocked from my current profile. I have a very hard time playing it casually or just for fun. I know some of you might think that I'm crazy. I mean, not being able to play a game because it's too good, that does sound really dumb. But I'm actually not alone here. It's a proven fact, especially nowadays as people are transitioning into more casual games, that games with casual appeal are more likely to be played rather than games with massive immersion. That's why simple one-button iPhone games are so popular that you can just pick up and play without needing to get very invested in what you're doing. Now that's not to say I'm just picks up and plays video games to completely lose myself in my imagination and just have my fingers do things I'm not paying attention to, not at all. But it does, you have to admit, make every game somewhat easier to pick up and play if it's more casual. And if you don't actually have to focus on it quite as much. That's also not to say a game is better or worse for being more casual or more immersive, but this is where Super Mario 64 manages to get my attention more than Galaxy. Super stinkin' Mario stinkin'. Okay, I'm not doing that anymore. I apologize for that. Mario 64. This game is the definer of definers. While Mario Galaxy introduced gravity play and motion controls like a pro, Mario 64 defined 3D games altogether. Before this game, much like with Galaxy, people didn't know what to expect from Mario. Today, it's easy to imagine how something can go from 2 dimensions to 3 dimensions, but being a fresh concept, there were a lot of things that had to be thought out. First, and most notoriously, the camera. This was an easy thing to figure out in 2 dimensions. Just keep the character in the middle of the screen, and you'll be good. But in 3 dimensions, there was more to think about. Now the camera had to turn, it had to angle up and down, and how would it know when and where to turn? In 2 dimensions, the game knew exactly that if you were moving one way, you wanted the camera to follow. But in 3 dimensions, what if you turned and faced the other way? Would the camera stay facing you? What if you wanted it to stay facing one way even though you were turning? Or what if you wanted to look around without moving? To solve this issue, Nintendo made a brilliant move of making the camera an actual character that you controlled. This is Lakitu. He floats around on a cloud and records whatever you do with his camera. This was brilliant because it allowed players to easily understand what the camera could do, which was pretty much anything you told it to. Many people forget that you aren't just controlling Mario in Mario 64, but also Lakitu at the same time with the C buttons. This was a brilliant way of introducing players to the camera controls, and to make things even better, Nintendo made sure to include a lot of options. You could set Lakitu to just stay behind you, go into a first-person view, or just let you control it yourself. Of course, the other big innovation was the jump to 3D. The jump, and the fact that it was the first 3D Mario game Nintendo designed, is a huge part of why I love this game just as much as Galaxy. Super Mario 64's jump to 3D was such a big change that Nintendo didn't need to focus on making crazy whimsical worlds and exotic new themes. Everything nowadays, pretty much every game, seems to have a need to take place in the future, or in space, or in some crazy far-fetched, yet cool scenario. Just look at all the bullcrud that Call of Duty is doing with their futuristic games. They just cannot go back to simple times. Mario 64 was simple. The hub wasn't a flying space station like it was in Galaxy, it was a simple castle. The first world wasn't a trip through planets, it was just a big hill. I'm not saying that crazy scenarios are bad, but having simple courses based on places you could probably go to in real life makes this game so much more whimsical and casual. Remember when you were a kid and used to pretend that a hill in your backyard was a massive mountain that you had to climb? That's the kind of whimsy that Mario 64 has, in such a simple way. Taking something as simple as a snowy mountain and turning it into a giant slide, or taking a simple clock and turning it into a deadly gorge, brought me back to those days when we would take what we had and turn it into something new and fresh with imagination and creativity. You could see that childlike creativity in almost every level of Mario 64, and that gave it such an innocent and exciting feel. Another part of what I liked about the simple design was the fact that it was very open. Mario Galaxy had a few worlds that were just one large planet, and those were the best, but many levels consisted of traveling between smaller planets in a sort of linear fashion. In Mario 64, the worlds were very open, and only one piece. This made it much more casual. The game made you feel like you didn't have to play through the level, and that you could just relax and enjoy going wherever you wanted, not being stopped from going back. This gave 64 more places to just relax and play casually, without having to get too invested. That being said, Mario Galaxy's one-piece worlds, that were more casual and open, were possibly more fun than those of Mario 64, but there were just so few of them compared to the N64 installment, and in Galaxy 2 the worlds got even more linear, with much smaller open worlds, and a larger number of smaller worlds. People today will argue that Galaxy is a better game than 64, but I never really understood how they can argue it so simply, when the games are so different. As a kid, I watched a lot of reviews, top 10 lists, and comparison videos. The topic of Mario 64 versus Mario Galaxy was one that I followed very closely as I loved both games, but I never understood how people could make the argument so simply. It was always something like, Mario 64 has worse level design, or Mario Galaxy has better music, but almost every aspect of the games are so different in style and purpose that I found it hard to be convinced of one or the other. The music in 64 is more peppy and upbeat, where Mario Galaxy is orchestrated and more grand and epic. I can't decide between the two. The level design in 64 is more open and casual, where Galaxy is more linear and busy. I can't decide between those two either. Even the bosses, the hub worlds, the control layouts, everything about these games, they're just so different and special in their own way that I can't compare them. The only thing that I can say is better about Galaxy is the story and graphics, but those are very small parts of rating a game. And all that will just get better as technology improves for any game. Now, there are some smaller things that I could compare, but I'm not sure the smaller things should make much of a difference. In Mario 64, you have a few more moves, like diving, sliding, Koopa surfing, but Mario Galaxy had more ways of attacking, with Mario's spin and being able to throw shells. In the end, I just can't decide which one I like more, and I don't think I should have to. Today on the internet, we have to always decide which games we like more and which games we like less, but why can't we just not? Why should we feel like we have to choose between two great games if we don't have any idea which one we like more? This is just going to cause us to try and find ways that each game might be better or worse, and we may make ourselves dislike the game more than before. The same goes for people who are doing that trend where we try to find games that might not have been as good as we remember. If we naturally think to ourselves that a game is not that good, or is a little overrated, then no issues there. Of course, voice your opinion. You most likely have some good points to make. But now it's trending to argue that a game is worse than people think. Now, of course, I don't have any big issues with people saying Mario 64 or Sonic Adventure 2 are worse than we thought, but because it's trending, and because so many people are doing it, just to do it, it's causing a lot of people to turn against games that they once loved, and bringing a lot of unnecessary sadness and negativity to the gaming community. People who love games like Mario 64 or Sonic Adventure 2 are seeing these people who try hard to think up reasons why the games are overrated, and many times will just think the same. And although it's not why I set out to make this video, it really is becoming the whole point. People have always said that certain games are overrated or what kind of problems they have, but we also had the people combating them and talking about the good in the games, and saying why we thought they were so fantastic to begin with. Now that it's trending, we just have people pointing out the bad things about the game, and we don't have the other people on the other side combating them in a way. As a result, people who are more impressionable will side with them without any defense whatsoever, and will oftentimes forget why they like the games to begin with.
So all this was just kind of a public service announcement to make up your own opinions and not just listen to what everyone else says?
Well, in some ways. I came into this video trying to figure out which one I liked more, and I had a really hard time choosing between the two. Eventually, I just had to make my mind shut up and just say, why can't I just leave myself with the opinion that I have right now, where I don't have to say that one is worse than the other. On the internet, it's all about picking and choosing, especially in the gaming community, and as a result, some people are stuck sitting there thinking about reasons, trying to conjure up certain aspects about games that they don't like, or trying to think up things that would make them like games less, just so that they can decide between the two. And this topic, making this video, was what really brought me to that realization. So I'm sure a lot of you came to this video trying to see if I thought Super Mario 64 or Galaxy was a better game. But all I can really say is, don't let people make you think that you have to pick and choose and dive deeply into why you may dislike or like something more. Maybe Super Mario 64 isn't as good as we thought, and maybe Sonic Adventure 2 is not even a good game, but you know what? I don't think any of us, me or you guys, should have to decide that. I think we should let our decisions be completely uninfluenced, and basically just think what we think.
So you're not going to make a video on Sonic Adventure 2 and why it's not a bad game, to defend it against these trending people who say that it's just not even very good?
Well, it's kind of already a topic of interest, so I think that could be justified.
Cool.
Sonic Adventure or Sonic Adventure 2? Which is better? The need to answer this question haunts me.
Shut up.
On the internet, it's all about pick choose. Hey, what is up guys? Peter here. Thanks a ton for watching this video. I really hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, feel free to give it a like to let me know. I upload videos like this almost every day, so go ahead and subscribe if you're into that kind of a thing. If you want to contact me directly or stay up to date with upcoming videos, check out my social medias. The links to those are in the description. Now I leave you with this music from DJ BassFox28, who provides most of the music for my videos. You can check him out in the description or by clicking the annotation to the left. Thanks again for watching, and as always, have yourselves a wonderful day.